Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Refined Savage podcast. Let's do a little business before we start the show here. Let's talk about what I am sipping on right now. It's deep, it's dark, it's bold, it's Viking coffee. Viking coffee out of Bowling Green, Ohio, Evan Armstrong's brand. That guy is making the best coffee around. You need to give him a holler. Check out our Old Man Strength brew. It is fantastic, super strong, dark roast coffee. Took me a week to pick out what flavors I like, me and the wife and Aaron Varga here at the gym, and we picked out our blend, and that became Old Man Strength Coffee. Use the code VikingCoffee10 at checkout. Go to VikingCoffeeCo.com, and you get 10% off. Cerberus Strength. I was talking to Ken at Cerberus Strength the other day, and he wants all you Highland Games people to know that they are making sandbags for throwing. So a lot of you guys are doing indoor Highlanders, or you need something to practice the weights indoor with, or you're training for the Arnold Classic, and Cerberus is making some heavy-duty throwing bags you can check out. Load them to whatever weight you want, but they're perfect for indoor throwing. He was sending me some pictures and links to them. Very cool stuff. I highly recommend. I know that their regular lifting sandbags are super heavy duty, and I am betting that the throwing bags are just as good or even better. They also make tacky, some great stone tacky. So for you people out there who are doing a lot of stone lifting, check out Cerberus Strength, for Christ's sake. I don't know what your problem is. You should be buying from Cerberus. On top of all that, they have their knee sleeves, their elbow sleeves, their wraps, their straps, their belts, T-shirts, anything you could want for your strength journey, they have it at Cerberus-strength.us. Use the code REFINESAVAGE10 for 10% off at checkout. Warrior CBD is killing it. I talked to Nancy the other day. She is super happy with you guys. You are buying CBD oil faster than she can make it, and that's a good thing. And I know that you guys are getting good night's sleeps. Your joint pain is easing, and you're feeling great. So check out WarriorCBDofficial.com. CBD oil, it was created by jiu-jitsu and judo and MMA fighters. These guys get bumped up and bruised. You don't have to tell me that. I'm always bumped up and bruised from jiu-jitsu. Check them out. Their roll-on is fantastic. I was talking to Jessica Bridenthal the other day. She was having some muscle aches and pains. I sent her that way. The stuff is fantastic. Now, check with Nancy at Warrior CBD. Slide in her DMs at Warrior CBD on Instagram and talk to her a little bit about what's in the product. Hey, some of you might be in a business where you're going to get drug tested every day, and certain products aren't going to be right for you. So make sure you're getting the right stuff. I highly recommend the 1,000 milligram full spectrum THC Warrior CBD oil. I take it every night. So check them out. WarriorCBDofficial.com. Use the code WARRIOR20 off for 20% off at checkout. Serious Steel. Can't say enough about them. These guys are the best. SeriousSteel.com. Chad Clark's boys over at Serious Steel, they could not be better people. They are helping us out, gave us some prizes for Highlander. And for those of you wanting to sign up for Highlander, get on that. Time is running out. But anyhow, Serious Steel. If you are trying to outfit a home gym, a garage gym, a high school gym, a commercial gym, whatever you need, these guys have all the products available. Give them a holler. See what you need. Get on their website at SeriousSteel.com. Use the code SAVAGE at checkout for 10% off. They have the best bands I've ever used. They have awesome stone sleeves, so if you don't want the giant burns on your arm from lifting Atlas stones, or if you're just tired of constantly tacking and untacking, check out their stone sleeves. I highly recommend them. Some people here at the gym have them, and they are very, very cool stuff. Stay Classy Meats. It's over. It's done, guys. I'm all out of my first box of Stay Classy meats. It's very sad. Now I don't know where my meat's coming from. You know, I go to the store. I don't know this cow. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know what kind of life he's led. Nobody's selling me buffalo or elk meat. It's very difficult once you get hooked on Stay Classy meats. Straight out of Bozeman, Montana, these guys are doing it right. You can track the meat and know that it all comes from Montana. This isn't meat being shipped across the country to them and then again across to you. They know these animals. They know who's raising them. They know they're being raised right and humanely. The meat is fantastic. I have never had buffalo like the steaks these guys sent out to me. The bacon tips were incredible. The steaks were out of this world. The elk meat, everything was fantastic. And now I'm lamenting that it's gone. But I'm just going to keep plugging away at them because that's the deal I made. And I may have to buy a box in between boxes. So check them out at stayclassymeats.com. Use the code SAVAGE at checkout for 10% off. Hey, you're going to buy meat anyhow. Why not get it from a company that's supporting the podcast you love? I hope you love it. That's why you're here. Check them out. Buy some meat from Stay Classy Meats. Now, we have a new sponsor. I was looking for an apparel company. Eric at Iron and Stone Strength jumped into the fray. Check out their website, ironandstonestrength.com. These guys are up in the Buffalo, New York area, and they are our kind of people. They are lifting stones. They are pressing weights overhead. They're carrying yokes and farmer's walks. And on top of all that at their gym, Eric is making some of the coolest gear around. Hats, T-shirts, sweatpants, anything you could want. Hey, rep your sport, man. Strongman is where it's at, and these guys are making some of the coolest gear on the planet, representing that sport and athletics in general. Give them a holler. ironandstrength.com. Use the code REFINESAVAGE at checkout for 20% off. Today on the show, we have the one, the only Beau Faye, professional Highland Games athlete and history teacher. He has been in the sport for like a million years. Super interesting guy. Great thrower. Great human being. We sat down and talked and talked and talked and talked. I think you're going to love this one. I want you to check it out. Sit back with your Viking coffee and your Stay Classy Meats and your T-shirt from Iron, Stone, and Strength. And listen to this one. We will see you bastards at the end.
Pretty well. All right. Good. I know you're a professional now. I'm a professional. You're seasoned.
Beau Faye, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's good to be here. It's good to be, for the first time ever, out at Blind Dog.
Yes.
It's a pleasure.
Yes. Keep this thing as close to your face as possible, right, so I don't get, because people bitch at me all the time.
Is that better right there, probably?
Perfect, yes. Okay. We're right. Both our voices are pretty obnoxious, so they'll probably be too loud anyhow. So, how is this isn't your first time flying into Cleveland, though?
No, I flew to Cleveland a couple years ago. One year I came in at about midnight because I had 8th grade dance duty. Because, being a teacher, it was the last day of school because we always finish late. So I literally had to chaperone the 8th grade formal until about 9 o'clock, hop on a plane. I got into Steiger's place at about 1 o'clock in the morning.
Does everyone still stay at Steiger's?
Everyone still stays at Steiger's, but it's not quite the slumber party that it used to be.
Right.
Years ago, there used to be a dozen guys there.
Oh, yeah, easy,
and, you'd be sleeping on the floor and couches and whatnot, and now it's gotten a little bit smaller, but... Chafin is pretty much the permanent house guest at Steiger's. Yeah. So he'll be there for about 3 or 4 days eating Doug and Lisa out of House and Home.
That was a big burden when he stopped staying with me and started staying with Steiger. It was such a burden. Because that fucker will show up. He doesn't have anything. He'll need you to go get him a fan. You have to get him an extra pillow. You have to get him all his snacks.
And a new chain.
A new chain, right, for his giant neck.
And the thing is, Doug and Lisa are so accommodating. But, Chafin is like an honorary Midwesterner now because he does all these games in Michigan. Yeah. He goes up to Alma. He goes up. He does Wisconsin. So every time he's out there, doing one of these games out here, he's always staying with Doug and Lisa. So the Chafin bill, the Chafin tab, I hate to think of what it is. Just for one season.
I always said that traveling with Chafin, I felt like Philo Beto in every which way you can, and he was my Clyde. So you didn't know if he was going to shit in a police car or punch out a biker gang, or you just had no idea what he was going to do.
Never a dull moment.
No.
One of my favorite things about Chafin, though, is that Chafin has pulled a couple... I think what you would call a Roydian slip. So my favorite was, a lot of us, we use Equiblock.
Right.
The liniment that you put on. So I remember a couple years ago, my back was bothering me as always. So Chafin goes, "Oh boy, I got some of that equipoise in my bag."
He very well may have.
Do you, Chris? And that's become kind of the running joke now, the equipoise.
I would not be surprised what that character has in his bag. He, the hardest thing is, and me and Carrie have talked about this, whether we were going to talk about Chafin on the show, or if I was ever going to have Chafin on the show. The problem is, all of Chafin's stories are untellable. The really, really good ones that people want to hear would cause either someone to go to jail or someone to get divorced or someone. I mean, they're the most outrageous stories you could ever imagine. And half the times he has no idea he's being outrageous.
Well, most of your listeners, too, would also need subtitles, too.
Yeah.
To be able to understand that Southern brogue.
It takes a little while.
Yeah, indeed.
The funniest thing is Chafin talking to someone from Scotland. Both of them are speaking English, and no one has any freaking clue what the other one's saying.
Like two drunks at the bar that can't quite communicate coherently with each other.
Right. Yeah, that's him. I'm looking forward to seeing him. I see him once a year. I used to, we used to travel every weekend almost together. Me, Carrie, Craig, and him. Right. And when we got out of sport, when I got out of the sport, the only real contact I had with him was social media. Yeah. But he's such a boner on social media that I just had to block him. Well, I can't listen to you anymore.
I mean, his social media presence is basically, I don't even know how to describe it. It's beyond tinged with political innuendo.
Oh, is he big into that?
Well, it's just, it's whichever video he can find of the latest, as he says, POS that needs to be locked up. And usually it's a video that's like 10 years old, something egregious happening, but no, it's entertaining. It's entertaining.
Yeah, he was always entertaining.
Always entertaining.
Yeah, I'll give him a big hug tomorrow and see him my one time per year.
Always fun hanging out with Chafin. I'll see him down at your favorite games, Grandfather Mountain, in a few weeks as well.
That was not my favorite place. I got invited there once and I said, nope, I'm not doing that.
That was it, one and done.
One and done. After you get stuck on that mountain, because they parked you nose to nose and door to door with every other car, and it's like
that almost happened to me last year, and I managed to get out probably with 5 minutes to spare, and I had to get home too. So or 2 years ago rather. Yeah.
What have you done this year so far?
This year I've done. Well, I'm going to pretend that I didn't do Loch Norman because I had no business going to Loch Norman. I got waitlisted and was not in any shape really to go and compete. And in fact, the previous weekend I was with one of my best friends actually in Colombia for his bachelor party.
Colombia, the country?
The country,
Colombia?
Yeah. We were down in Colombia.
Okay.
For his bachelor party. So
is he from Colombia?
No. He's an American guy I grew up with. But this has become a big destination for these types of parties. So we were in Cartagena, right on the coast. And my friend is very big into Latin culture and all that, so we all went down there. So we had a great time. So we were pretty much partying all weekend.
Yeah, right.
And then I come back, and I'm really in no physical shape. I'm just trying to readjust to society. And then I get a call or an email 2 or 3 days beforehand from McDougal who says, "Hey, we got an opening. You want to come down?" And I should have just said no.
Yeah.
And I went down. My flight got delayed 7 times. I think I got in at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Wow. Slept for a few hours. It rained all morning. We got on the field at noon, and I literally threw worse numbers than I did my first games, I think, as an amateur.
Oh, God.
I mean, it was one of those things that people have been posting on social media their first 2 games results.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I think that mine were I haven't looked at mine, but they were probably better than I threw at Loch Norman. We didn't even throw the last couple events, so I shouldn't have even gone. That was one where I came back, and my wife said, "I told you shouldn't have gone to that game."
If you want to get into that game.
That's it.
And McDougal's known for saying, "Oh yeah, you can come this year," and then not inviting you back next year.
And that was that was kind of what happened. So
he did that to me a couple times, and finally I was like, "Oh fuck you, I don't want to go back."
Yeah, and so I just went. And that was a disaster. So I kind of pretended that didn't happen. So I really opened up in earnest at Fair Hill. Or Unfair Hill, as Craig used to call it. Which I never understood because it's the flattest field you'll ever...
I have never seen... Everyone throws really well there, but there is no slope. I looked for the slope. I went there. I was all excited because I thought... and I threw huge, but there was no slope.
No slope.
Good weights.
Great. Yeah. Good old school weights. They've got that nice long 28. and we were throwing a nice stone.
I saw Gregor go 61 feet with that stone.
Yeah, and that might have been, I don't know which one that was. Zolk usually always tries to bring his stone and have everyone throw that.
Right.
I brought one this year, which was a nice one, kind of like Mackenzie's stone, a nice egg-shaped one that everybody threw well with. But no, Fairhill is kind of like the poor man's Celtic, because it's kind of like the last games where it's only pros.
Right.
Nikita comes in now, so Nikita throws with us. So there's basically, they've got one woman and the rest is pros, but it's not like it used to be, where you used to just have, just pros or AMs or even just pros on the field. Now we're so used to having so many classes on the field. You've got masters and women and this and that and the other. So it's kind of traditional in that sense.
When I started in 91, you had pros and amateurs. That was it. And it was crazy because the amateurs would throw at like 8 in the morning. Pros would start about noon. And the stipulation that was here at Ohio was you threw as an amateur and then you helped shag for the pros all day. So it was a real rite of passage.
And I think it's a huge learning experience. That was how I got into the games myself.
Yeah, that's how I learned everything.
Yeah. I still remember, for me, the first games I ever went to, it was actually 20 years ago this summer. So that was July of '99. That was the Virginia Scottish Games.
Yeah.
And, that was during the era of UHA.
Yeah.
So I was used to watching Highland games at 11:30 at night on ESPN2.
That was always so exciting when that came on.
And there was that anticipation that young people now will never understand because there was no TiVo, there was no... TiVo hasn't been around for probably 20 years. There was none of... You couldn't DVR anything.
No, you just stayed up.
You had to stay up and watch it. And if you missed it, you missed it. And I can remember that and watching it, and I knew that there was a local games because I grew up just 15 minutes from Alexandria. So I knew about the games because it had been there for a long time. So I said, well, why don't I go down and see if I can get on the field and help out? So I emailed the AD at that time, who you probably remember was Rona.
Oh, my God. I forgot all about her.
Yeah, Rona Sanderson.
Oh, my God. She was a ball buster.
She was notorious.
Loved her. Loved her. Oh, my God. I forgot all about her.
Yeah, so I went down there, and I was 16 years old. I was a sophomore shot and discus thrower in between my sophomore and junior year of high school. And I went down there, and she said, you're going to shag weights for the pros today. So I'm out on the field. This is my first real look at the Highland Games. Yeah. And I'm shagging weights for Peter Goodmanson, Carl Dodge, Carl Braun, Chris Rusher was there, Roy Bogue, Art McDermott, Harry McDonald. I mean, it was like an old episode of UHA.
Right, yeah.
I remember Steve wasn't there because Steve had just had his legs shattered by Carl Braun.
Yeah.
And Ryan wasn't there because evidently he had just blown himself up making tacky.
Kurt Pauley's apartment, he blew himself up.
Is that where it was? Yeah.
Yep. Set his whole the whole kitchen was ablaze.
Well, Kurt was there. I remember Kurt Pauley was there. He was throwing. So this for me as a 16-year-old kid was like my eyes were wide open. I think my jaw was on the floor the entire time. And just picking up the 56-pound weight, I just remember just shagging that, for the first time and thinking, damn, this thing's heavy. But yeah, that was it.
It was great. My first year doing that, and I started between my sophomore and junior year in high school, and I shagged, and it was Carl Braun, it was Jim McGoldrick, it was Paul Ferenczi, Ben Plucknett, and Harry McDonald. Wow. I show videos of Ben Plucknett to my son. I was like, man, I actually got to see that guy throw in person.
And he had the world record in the weight for height.
Yeah, right.
Now, was that at the Ohio Games?
At Ohio Games, used to be in Oberlin instead of Wellington, which is a much better venue, but the parking there's not enough parking, which is, I think, why they moved to Oberlin. I'm sure you know, but Oberlin is the most liberal college in America. So in the midst of all this farm country, it's all of a sudden you just come into Oberlin, and it's just like purple hair here and fracking protests over there, and it's crazy. But a lot of celebrity kids are in the town and everything. I went there one time, sat down in a restaurant. We were with our friends Matt and Lee and Aaron, my wife, and we sat down, and Johnny Knoxville's in the restaurant. It's crazy right here in this little town.
It's kind of like Asheville, North Carolina. It's something similar. You have kind of a liberal bastion in the middle of...
I dig cities like that, though. Like, I love going to Oberlin. I love going to Key West. I love going to Austin. Calgary was another good one. It's just these towns that you think are going to be just as rednecky as everyone around him, and then all of a sudden it's just this really liberal, laid-back kind of place.
You get these little pockets here and there.
Yeah. So you did Locke.
And then Fair Hill, and then I was in Georgetown 2 weeks ago. I was up in Canada.
Used to love that game.
Yeah, that was my first time going up there. So Jen was nice enough to invite me.
She's running that, but she's living in Virginia.
She's living in Virginia, so she's living probably 20 minutes from me.
Okay.
So she was at VSG last year, and my brother came up to throw in the East Coast Championship. So the two of us were just talking to her, and she mentioned that she had an opening at Georgetown. So I've always wanted to go north of the border for some games. I know you used to do a lot up in Canada.
All the time. More than half my games were up north. Yeah.
So we went up there. So that was fun. I got to throw with my brother, and he threw with the pros. I mean, it was they put the AMs and the pros together. I think they had like 3 AMs.
Right.
And then they put us together. So that was fun.
I think the way I remember it, I mean, I don't know if we had anybody who actually made it, but I think if you place third and you're an AM, you still get paid.
Yeah. I know. He got paid. And he beat us. Oh, he beat everybody in the both the height events.
Yeah.
So he won the sheaf. He threw 31 with the 20-pound bag.
That's
and then
great.
And then he stood 17 in the wob.
It was funny because I saw Jen at VSG, and it's one of those situations where, first of all, I hadn't seen her probably in 4 years, and I come out of a porta-john in Virginia, and Jen's standing there, and I look at her like, what? None of this makes sense. I had no idea she moved down there.
Yeah.
And she's like, Mark, and I'm like, why are you here?
I think her husband is a Canadian military police or
something like that, right? So, some kind of security. He's a giant dude.
Yeah. Something or another. So she was saying that they're there for like a 2-week, it's like a 2-year placement, and then they'll have another, opportunity to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
These different rotations and whatnot. So.
Yeah, Georgetown was always a fun games. I used to do Georgetown, Uxbridge, and Fergus, and Kincardine, and Sarnia. Sarnia was a great one. Sarnia was great because you would go up, and Friday night they would have a keg toss for distance, and what was the other one? Oh, Farmer's Walk. So I would go up. I would stay at the Sarnia Blue Water Bridge Inn, and it was a little bit past my budget at the time, but I knew that if I went there Friday night, I won the Farmer's Walk and won the keg, I would make enough money to get a nice hotel and a steak dinner. So that's what I would do every year.
They love the Farmer's Walk up in Canada.
They sure do.
Because that originated in Fergus,
right.
I think, originally.
They used to call it Fergus Walk.
Right, and they had some implements up at Georgetown. I got to meet a few folks up at Georgetown I had heard about for years. I met Burl Conrad for the first time.
Burl.
So Burl wasn't throwing. This was, I think, the first year he's not throwing.
Right.
So he was helping judge, and then I met the legendary Warren Trask as well.
Warren Trask, he is a legend.
Who I know is quite a character, and he was our judge for the day.
One of the best judges out there. He is strict as hell, but he's got an eye for everything.
Yeah.
He was a dude, when I was competing with him, we did not get along at all.
I heard a lot of people say that.
Yeah, but once he became a judge, it was like a whole new world. Because I was kind of a dick, and he was kind of a dick, and we just didn't get along because we were competing with each other. But once that was down, then all of a sudden we got along real well. And
sometimes it works out like that.
Yeah. But he was he runs. I don't know if you haven't been to Fergus yet, but if you ever get a chance to go to Fergus, that and Celtic were my 2 absolute favorite games, and he runs that game so smoothly, and he's got this huge crew that you need the trig moved, in between, and it's done in seconds because like 7 guys will run up there and they have the tools ready to go, and then they break for lunch, and then you go up in this VIP room, and it's just for the athletes, and it's just food as far as the eye can see, and it's incredible.
And as you know, those little things from an athlete's perspective make a world of difference when it comes to a games.
And then we would go back down to Detroit, and we'd hit the Hustler Club in Detroit on our way home. It was always great. Spend some of that Canadian money.
Of course. I just got reamed actually at the airport, finally exchanging my Canadian money. The exchange rate's terrible right now.
Right.
So I was hanging on to that cash from Georgetown, and then I literally just exchanged it now over at the airport. It was terrible.
Yeah, we used to go through the casinos. So we would hit the Niagara Falls Casino or something like that on the way, or Windsor. We hit it on the way back and exchange the rate.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, it was always good. Canada games were by far my favorite. I loved going up there. I loved the people. They were super knowledgeable.
Yeah.
I remember in Georgetown one year, the guy who played, what the hell was his name on the show? Daphne's boyfriend on the show, Frasier, the little lawyer guy.
It wasn't the bulldog guy, was it?
No. She, for a while on the show, she was dating this little guy who was a lawyer on the show.
Okay.
I can't remember his name, but he would come to the Georgetown games because his mother lived there.
Daphne was the one that lived in with Frasier and his dad.
Yep.
Okay.
Donnie. The character's name was Donnie, I believe.
Okay. That was a great show, Frasier.
Oh, Frasier was fantastic. Yeah. But he would come and sit there and watch the games, and we'd get our pictures taken with him and stuff. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it was nice, and we had good weather and everything. I didn't throw as well as I would have liked, but it's kind of been the way it's been for a while. I was hurt last year. I missed most of the season last year. In fact, I came to Ohio. Literally, John Collins drove me here, and I was laying. I couldn't even stand. I was in so much pain. I was laying in the back of his truck the entire ride here, and it was one of those things where I literally showed up because I had to maintain my invite.
Yeah.
And I remember that was one thing that you guys told me when I first started out, just even hearing you guys talk, you and Carrie and Craig, they were saying when you get into some games, you have to go to that games no matter what.
Yep.
And that's one of the harder things or more stressful things about being a pro is that, once you get those invites, particularly with these NASA games where there's always a long wait list and Alex usually runs it based on who was there the previous year, I've learned that, your leg could be falling off, but you still have to show up.
Well, it was that's what got me about some games was that's the way it's always been run. And it's just, that's the knowledge you have. You're a pro, you get invited, you show up, and you don't cancel unless it's an absolute emergency. And if you cancel, even if it is an absolute emergency, there's a chance you're not going to get invited next year, especially if it's an old school AD. And Alex, even though she isn't old, she works like an old school AD. And what was so frustrating me about some games where you get on the waiting list and they'd invite you, and then you would just assume that, next year you're going back, and then you'd call them, and, no, you're back on the waiting list.
Right, yeah. Well, yeah, it's happened.
That's not how it works, guys. That's not how this sport runs.
It's happened to me, and it's regional, and it's very much dependent on who the AD is.
Yeah.
But, it is difficult, too, because, there are times where you might have an injury and say, I really need to take 6 months off, or I need to rehab. But you can't. You have to go to games.
Not
you
if you want to make that money.
You have to throw it 70% or 80% just to, that's the hard part about it. In a way, of course, the situation over in Scotland is completely different. They don't have the pool of athletes that we do,
which is crazy.
But the idea of just being able to show up and throw, it would take a lot of pressure off.
It was such a romantic. I never got to do it, but it was such a romantic story every year when the guys would go over there for games week, and they would just decide that morning what games they were going to go to. And some of them would go to this games, and the other ones would go across to this game, so they could all win the money.
And I remember because I was there in 2012. I was there for 3.5 weeks in 2012, and I was there for about 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks in 2013. And when during the week there'd usually maybe be only one games, maybe two at the most, Monday through Friday. But when the weekend hit, on the Saturday or the Sunday, there'd be some Saturdays there'd be 6 or 7 games in the whole country. So on Friday, everybody starts colluding with everybody else, asking what games are you going to go to, and the idea is everybody would spread out, so that you could figure out where you could make the most money.
Yeah, because then the locals will show up and they're 140 pounds or 70 years old.
Yeah, forget about it.
Some of those old videos. There used to be an old video of Ryan Vieira and Larry Brock traveling around Games Week one year, and it would be like Larry Brock, Ryan Vieira, Sebastian Venta, and then like a 70-year-old dude, and then a guy who looks like he's a marathon runner. It was. And
that was the thing that was strange, was that depending on the year, you could go over there. In theory, you could be a mid-level pro, and in theory, you could go over there and make nothing.
Right.
Or you could show up and you could make a killing because you're going to go to games where most of the Americans didn't show up.
Yep.
Or some of the guys were injured over there. One year, I went up to Halkirk. My first year I was there, I went up to Halkirk. And I always wanted to do that games, and they have a separate international purse at Halkirk. So I showed up, and I was the only international thrower because that day Dougie had put on the big one down in Calendar.
Okay.
So Ryder was there, both of the Ventas were there, some other Polish guys were there. So when I showed up to Halkirk, as an American, I was the only foreigner. So not only was I able to, win some money I was throwing, I think, pretty well in some of the events, but there was a separate purse. So I ended up making a killing there one year. I went back the next year. I think everybody heard that I made a fortune at Hawkirk the year before, so the whole world showed up. We had 15 guys, which over there, if there's 15 guys, they say, okay, you're doing 2 throws instead of 3. And I didn't fare too well. I think I won the sheaf, or maybe something like that.
You're always keeping that money close to the vest. We would talk, the three of us, me, Kerry, and Craig, and especially like games like Wisconsin, where all the guys would go out to Pleasanton. We just kept our mouths shut because we were making more money in Wisconsin than they were making in Pleasanton.
I hear that games pay as well. And they have the Irish events there too, right? Do you get paid for those Irish events?
Yeah, they call them the Irish events. We threw those. So the guy who originally started the Irish events out there was Sarge. I don't know if you ever met Sarge.
I've heard of him.
Sarge was one of the most interesting characters in Highland games. He was a guy who would start the weekend talking with a Chicago accent, and the drunker he got, it went to this Scottish accent, and then by the end of the weekend, he was talking like a pirate. He was just a train wreck. Well, I think he made up these Irish events because he had us throwing these things on Sunday every year. One year, a girl from Ireland shows up. Mm-hmm. And we're like, whoa, you're going to really enjoy this. And she goes, I've never seen these events in my life. Right. She goes, Irish events, So, but it was just shit I think he made up in his head. Yeah. But, hey, we're Highland Games athletes. We'll throw anything for money.
My understanding is, like, the sheaf they throw in Ireland, but, they throw, like, an 8-pound bag or something. So you see these videos of these guys throwing 50 feet or 60 feet in the sheaf, but they're throwing an 8-pound. But that might be the only real Irish.
Which is basically what the amateurs are doing now in American Highland games.
Pretty much.
Everyone's making such a big deal about these guys breaking world records in the sheaf, and what people don't understand is, when I was an amateur, we were throwing that 16-pound bag, and the athletic director stepped in and said, we're moving this up to 20 because our standards don't go that high anymore. So the world record just stayed wherever it was, and now they're bringing that back, and guys are going, I don't know how high.
Now, when you started, were some people still using the push technique? Or was
I started my first year, I pushed.
Yeah.
And then Alistair Gunn, we had heard about Alistair Gunn doing the flip, and, you couldn't find videos of that shit.
Right.
So a buddy of mine had gone up to Fergus, saw him do it, and then came down and tried to show us how to do it. And it was, you used to push that bag over your head.
That's the great thing about it is, the Scots don't even do the damn event, and then Alistair figures out how to revolutionize it in a way that the Americans hadn't figured out at that time.
Yeah.
Because I think at that time, like, you'd see the old videos, guys would throw 20, and then they'd go up to 21, then 22.
We had those long-ass forks,
Yeah.
Yeah, my fork was taller than I was when I started.
That event has evolved like crazy. Now you have Spencer doing these insane things.
It's almost Spencer. It's almost oh well, here we go, another world record. It's not even exciting anymore because he does it every fucking week.
And he's smart because he's doing the Sergei Bubka method of pushing it up 1 inch at a time.
Super smart.
The last thing we want is to see him say, push it up to 38.
Right.
The last thing he wants to do is to say that.
God love him. He's doing it, man. It was so exciting at first. Now it's like you just expect it to happen every weekend.
Yeah, that's incredible.
But it's good for the fans at the games, and they get to see a world record.
And the crowd loves the event. Yeah. It goes over.
It's a great event.
Yeah, people love it.
Anything where they can see that you were successful or not. Caber 2 is another one like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tomorrow, who do we have? We have you and Chafin and Matt Hand.
Yeah, it's going to be Chafin and I.
The Stash.
Steiger will be there. Matt Handjob. John Collins. Who else are we going to have? John Pilling will be there. I imagine Gilly. I haven't heard much from Gilly, but Gilly's here every year.
I assume, yeah.
But I think Brazina might be there.
He is there. Yeah, I just had him on the podcast a couple weeks ago.
Woody Harrelson.
He reminds me of a civilized Chafin.
Yeah, he is a little bit more. It's pretty.
He couldn't have been nicer. I was worried the whole time because he reminded me a little of Chafin. I was like, "Is this guy going to set my desk on fire?"
He's a little bit of Woody Harrelson and Natural Born Killers.
Yeah,
he's got a little bit of that, but
he came and locked his keys in his truck. So afterwards, we had to get a tow truck out here to get him out.
I'm not surprised. Talks like he's got a mouthful of marbles.
Yeah.
One of my great memories was staying with him out at the Arizona games. So Arizona, I think, was my first ever pro games in 2013.
"Quote unquote" pro, because they barely paid you anything.
That was it, and that was another thing that I learned too from you guys was, they were, I was getting these nuggets because I turned pro right when you guys were all retiring. So it was 2013. And I've been in AM for a long time. I've been in AM for 11 years. I'd really been training in earnest for about 6 or 7, but I was at that point where I just said I need to either make the jump or I'm going to languish as an AM for the rest of my career. And I just did it. A few people said, just do it. And I did. But I remember going out to Phoenix, and that was an incredible start to this journey because I remember it was one of those things where I bought a ticket and then the plane was full. And then the woman there at the gate is trying to explain to me, no, there's no seat for you. I said, well, I bought a ticket. And it was one of these things, you know. And I remember kind of getting this gleam in my eye and pulling this. I said, well, I'm a professional athlete.
Right.
You know, it couldn't have been more full of shit. I'm going to my first ever pro games. And I said, I need to be in Phoenix tomorrow, you know. So they literally got me on like a different plane, a different gate. I end up getting in way late, you know, like past midnight. Brazina picks me up, whisks me away out to his like compound in the middle of the desert. You know, I'm frightened the entire time. He's blasting Poison by Alice Cooper. Like he was on this kick that whole weekend where he just wanted to play Poison. You know, and then he takes me to his house, and it's like this Highland Games flop house where like basically like everybody that was coming into town for the games was staying there. So I walk in, it's just like carnage, just like bodies of people like sleeping on the ground, on the floor, and all of this. And that was an interesting weekend, but very, very memorable. It was I think he had all the folks from California staying with him, and all the California throwers and all that. But that was wild. That was a wild start to that journey. I think I don't think I threw very well there, but Spencer was there, and I guess Brazina moved back here a few years ago. Yeah,
he was talking about that. I guess his wife, I think, is from this area, or no, his. Or,
I think he's originally
from his wife's from Florida, so he wanted to be close to his family again, so he moved back out here. But we talked about that on the show, and
interesting character. And I guess he broke his arm a few years ago. It was out in Costa Mesa.
Caper came back and smacked him, and he flew home like that.
Terrible. Yeah, terrible.
Yeah, flew home with his arm all fucked up, and before he went to the doctor, it was just.
Yeah. So I guess he's just getting back into it. So that's good. I haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun.
Yeah, he was all psyched up when he was in here. So should be good. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be doing the announcing tomorrow, and
ripping on us all day.
Yeah, why
fun.
Not? Alex made a comment that she'd keep me a check, and I'm like, how are you going to do that? I'm not getting paid for this. I offer to do it for free.
No, you can do whatever you want. When you're doing a pro bono, you
run the risk.
That's it. Yeah, you
get what you pay for. So we'll see what kind of adventures I get in. Hopefully, someone in the crowd will have rum, and it'll be good.
It'll be fun. I remember. So I'm thinking back now to my first season. Ohio was one of my. That might have been my second pro games ever, and that was the same kind of thing. I remember it was the middle of the week, and Alex called me up and said that I think it was Chafin that year had gotten hurt, and dropped out, and said, "Do you want to come to Ohio?" And of course, I said, absolutely, I'll be there. And I can remember coming out to Ohio, and I think Heather told me, in her very, nice, thoughtful Heather way, you should get in touch with Doug Steiger because everyone stays out at Doug's. At this time, I didn't really know Doug. I mean, I knew of Doug. Doug was a guy with a great mustache.
The best mustache in the game.
And I had seen him, but, I was an AM, and I still kind of was of that mindset that if you're an AM, you kind of keep to yourself, and you keep quiet, and so I remember I said, okay, thanks, and I didn't pick up the phone or call anybody. And
that's a hard call to make.
Yeah, I don't want to invite myself over to anybody's house, but I can remember arriving here, after this really long drive, and I didn't know the area at all, and I booked a room in probably the most depressing motel that I've ever stayed in, and that says a lot, for
the way we rolled,
for the way that we live. And it was like an Econo Lodge or something in Elyria.
I know exactly where it is.
And I can remember checking into this motel and thinking to myself, I actually was depressed. It was like, people have killed themselves in this.
Oh, absolutely. I know exactly where it is. There's been murders, drug deals, and it's a horrible place.
And I can remember it was like one of the loneliest nights of my life. And I remember I walked across the street over to the Denny's across the street.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I ate dinner all by myself, and I came back and I thought to myself, I've really made it.
You're a
professional athlete.
You're a pro.
And then, sure enough, I get on the field the next day, and I was extremely intimidated because it was you, Sean Betts, KO, Hadley, Dave Barron, Craig,
Yeah.
Steiger. Who am I forgetting? It was like everybody that I had looked up to and watched videos of, and all of a sudden it's like, holy shit! Like,
welcome to the dance.
Yeah, and I don't think I probably didn't say more than 10 words that day. I just kind of kept a low profile.
And you think everybody's watching you, and nobody is.
Right. Everyone's thinking, forget the new guy. They're worrying about each other.
They're not going to even pay attention to you unless you do something huge. Right. And, they just. I remember going down to Knoxville. One of my first pro games, I got on a waiting list, and all of a sudden I didn't know where the fuck Knoxville was. They called me. I went down there, and it was Ryan and Francis Brebner and Ron McKee and Peter Goodmanson. I'm like, holy shit!
It's frightening. Yeah. Particularly, good old Ron McKee. Yeah. And, I've got a Ron McKee story. So I remember watching him in shot putting with the Big O.
Right.
He was one of the guys doing drills. He had the mullet, the fro mullet, and everything. And and I knew that he was, I think he was the shortest guy ever to throw like 19 meters or something in the shot put, 19 whatever it was. And I can remember a few years ago, I've got some family out in California, out near Monterey. So I did the Monterey games the last year they had a pro class. And I can remember, first of all, going out to that games and being a history teacher and a history buff. I couldn't believe it when I found out when Carlos told us we were throwing in the arena where they had the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967. It's the exact arena. So you're literally picking the caber and you're taking your line of vision and you're running right towards the stage where Hendrix played the guitar with his teeth and lights his guitar on fire.
Right.
And it looks exactly the same now as it did 50 years ago. So I thought that's the coolest.
It was the Monterey Pop Festival?
Monterey Pop Festival, yeah. So that was June of '67. And that was what started the whole Summer of Love. What started the whole movement out to San Francisco.
Wow.
And it was wild.
But
I can remember getting ready to take my first stone throw. And I'm tucking the stone, and literally the crowd is right above you because it's like an old horse arena.
Okay.
So you're below the crowd. And I'm tucking the stone, and I just hear some guy go, "Go, Beau!" And I look up, and it's Ron McKee. And I've maybe talked to him online, but I've never spoken to him. And I just about shat myself.
Yeah.
And then I think, probably fouled it or something because I was starstruck. But that's the cool thing about the sport too, is that, when you're coming up, you look at everybody as being a real celebrity, but it's a really small community. And even if you are a celebrity within the community, you're still just flesh and blood.
Yeah. I mean, like that games in Knoxville, maybe, very, very early. Like first year, definitely, maybe second or third games. And I go, and I'm in the bar with Francis Brebner on one side and Peter Goodmanson on the other, and I can't understand a word Francis is talking about, but I sat there for 3 or 4 hours listening to everything.
And it was probably one of the greatest memories you ever had, too, right?
I remember it vividly. And it led to a lot of those moments through history that were a lot better than the actual throwing, where you're hanging out with these characters. I remember, it's funny because when I first got into the pros, I was one of the few people who had a fucking job. Mm-hmm. Vieira didn't work. Right. Harry McDonald didn't work. Francis Brebner didn't work. None of these guys worked. Phil Martin, Jim McGoldrick. Nobody worked.
I remember Rusher telling me a few years ago that he was paying the bills with his Highland Games checks at that time. Yeah. Can you imagine that now?
Well, I mean, I had a job that paid shitty, and the majority of my bills were paid with Highland Games money, but I was not doing well. I was not doing well for sure.
I can't imagine the stress of having to think to yourself, if I get injured or if I start throwing poorly, I'm not going to be able to pay my electricity bill this month.
I think that's why you have such a different... So when I was an amateur, the pros were so nasty.
Right.
They were such dickheads to each other and to everybody. And then we came out, we were still kind of dickheads, but I think it was because we remembered how it was to be a pro, and so we were kind of dickheads. And then when we left the sport, you guys all seem to love each other, so I think it's gotten, because I think you all have jobs and have money,
Yeah, I think it's gotten to the point where most of us, well, I don't think any of us are doing it for a living, so it is, it's viewed as a supplemental income,
right?
And it's a fun hobby that is going to help pay for itself, at the very least, and maybe give us a few extra bucks. So I don't think there's that type of stress.
Right.
I can imagine that the atmosphere on the field would be very different if people were paying, if it was your livelihood on the line.
Yeah.
Now, I can remember going over to Scotland, it's different over there. First of all, you do have to prove yourself just character-wise to the people. Mm-hmm. They don't take too kindly to people coming over that are going to potentially take their money from them.
Sure.
And the Scots are notorious for, if there's a 3-way tie in the wait over the bar, you can be sure that they're going to be under the tent afterwards, making sure that they get their £7.50,
right,
or 75 pence, or whatever it is. But yeah, over there it's a little bit different. It still is a little bit more of that mindset of a little bit more cutthroat, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And it was also interesting too. I think it's a little bit more old school too, in that, as here in the games, people are so welcoming now too.
Yeah.
You go to the games, they open up as many classes. You see some guy falling all over the place and throwing the heavyweight 4 feet, and somebody's over there clapping and saying good job. Whereas you go over there, and they go, who's this fucking guy making the day go long? And that was the big thing. Yeah. They call people just terrible things and saying, why are you even out here? Which I kind of appreciated too at the same time, because you want to open up the sport, but at the same time, I trained for a long time before I ever had the nerve to step on a field.
Yeah. And
I can remember at that time, I think, the first games I ever did, I was 19 years old. I think I threw the stone 43 feet. I threw the weight for height 14.6. I'd never touched a 56-pound weight. And I didn't even feel like at that point, I wasn't sure if I was good enough to be on the field, or if I was going to be wasting people's time.
Right.
I wanted to make sure that I wasn't disrespecting the sport. Now, that was almost 20 years ago. Whereas now you'll see people come out, it's like they're borrowing someone's kilt.
Yep.
They've never even bothered to throw the events. I would never show up to any sport and just think, oh, I'm just going to do this.
Yeah.
I'm just going to try it out here on the field today. And that's the one thing, is you want to open up the sport, but you also want people to have respect for the sport, and also respect for everybody else who do take the time in training. And that was one of the things I remember when I finally turned pro. A lot of the local games, the Massa games at that point, weren't even having an amateur A or B class. They'd have just an open AM class.
Yeah.
And I can remember we were down at Richmond, I think that final year in 2012, and we had 20 guys in the AM class. And I want to say 10 of them were these guys that had never touched an implement before, who had come from some local gym in Richmond.
Right.
And John Collins and I are out there warming up with the 56. We'd both thrown the 56 40 feet or 41 feet at that point in our careers. And you've got guys coming up to you going, how do you do that? And they're trying to figure out how to spin, trying to figure out how to rotate and throw at 6 feet. And at that point, I just thought to myself, this is bullshit.
Yeah, you're in the wrong spot.
And that was part of the impetus just to move up to the next level as well. Yeah,
my thoughts on that were, and like I said, I came from not having all those classes, and this always offends people when I say it, but what C-class amateurs become if you don't have a C-class is they become spectators.
Right.
And you train in your backyard until you're good enough to be an A-class amateur,
right.
And then you get to go pro. And I get that you want to compete, but do you really want to compete that much if you're not even practicing the events before you get on the field?
And that's what I'll never understand.
Yeah.
That's what I'll never understand. And I guess it's a difference in mindset. I'm not going to go out and pretend to be a horse jockey tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
I can't.
You're not going to play in the NBA.
I'm not. So, you have to find something. There's a lot of things that we want in this world, but you have to work pretty damn hard to get those as well, too.
Well, another thing that bugged me when I came back and got into the master's class was I'm not a giver of technique advice, because I'm also not the guy in the gym who says, hey, if you just do... Mm-hmm. I just keep to myself. And
unsolicited advice is some of the worst things that people can...
If you ask me a question, though, I'll give you everything I got.
Right.
And people would ask me questions and then give excuses why they weren't doing better.
Right.
And finally I was just like, fuck this. You either want my help or you don't want my help.
Take it or leave it.
And I had people that wanted to do private sessions with me and everything, and I was like, no, I'm not interested. It's not worth my time and money.
Right.
And I tell people now, too, and I think people take it the wrong way. When people contact me now about doing private throwing sessions, I'll do it. It's expensive because I got the gym here, and I got the podcast, and I got a wife and a kid, and I got a lot of shit going on. So if I'm going to take an hour and a half out of my day to sit in a field with you, you got to make it worth my while, and I don't really need your money, so
you reach a point in time in your life where you realize that your time is worth a lot.
That's where I'm at. It's not me trying to be a dick or saying that I'm, this incredible coach. I will help you. You will get better, but it's going to cost you some coins. And I shelled out a lot of money to get better when I was an amateur, and looked for every opportunity to get better. And if Ryan Vieira would have said, "Hey, give me $100 and I'll teach you how to throw that better," I would have slapped it down.
And I'm sure when you were coming up, you had Ryan and Kurt's tape, the psychedelic one with the Pink Floyd and all the other crazy, which is now available on the internet.
I bet it's on YouTube somewhere.
I found that not too long ago. That was always entertaining. I had one that Dave McClellan gave me. He had an old Larry Satchwell one where Satch was at Grandfather Mountain giving a demonstration of all the events. I probably watched that thing 50 times trying to figure it out, but it's different now. There's so many resources now that are available. I even look at from a track and field perspective, I look at what kids are throwing now at the NCAA level and how much it's changed since I graduated from college 13 years ago, and just the depth of the performances are insane. Performances that used to get you on the podium at a big conference wouldn't even make finals. Now at some of these, at Big Tens, I mean, it's insane.
I talked to Ashley Muffett at Ohio State. She's not even recruiting guys that can't throw 60 or 20 meters. She doesn't want them.
It's incredible. And I think part of that is that, in the olden days, even when I was competing, there was still that veil of secrecy where we didn't know what our competitors were doing, and competitors weren't sharing that information. So we weren't talking about our lifting or our throwing or any of that. Whereas now with Instagram, everybody does everything for the gram. So all these kids are posting their lifting sessions, they're posting their throwing sessions, so it becomes very transparent. And I think that what that's done is I think that's brought the level of coaching or just the entire sport up, because now that veil has kind of been lifted, and I think the coaching's getting better. I think the athletes are getting better because there is that shared knowledge. But if you go back to when you were starting the Highland Games, and you started a decade before I did, there was none of that.
No.
You're looking at it it's like the olden days with track and field. When I was in high school, I had a flip book.
That I would look at, I remember those.
Trying to see Al Feuerbach gliding, with a flip book, or you'd go on, you'd watch NBC's two-throw coverage of the shot put
and rewind it
over and over again.
Rewind. So my son is way more advanced. Well, he's a better spinner than I ever was, and a lot of that comes from Instagram because he's addicted to watching throwing videos, and he can analyze why Ryan Krauser throws the way he does, and he's just so much more knowledgeable. And at 14 years old, the kid is. He is going to be a fantastic coach if ever, because he's got an eye for it. But he's gotten that eye from watching all these different throwers and trying to figure out how they get the ball to go further. And like you said, we just never had anything like that.
And I've seen your son throw too. He moves well.
He's doing well.
He was going out and learning from Judd a bit.
He's going to camp again next week. Judd's that throwing camp at Ashland is insane. It's just, if you have a kid in track and field anywhere in the country, Ashland has the camp for you. But he's gone out and he worked with Judd. We got him a couple sessions with Justin Rohde, who's an Olympian.
Canadian,
Got a little different take on the shot put than I had ever seen before. But Hayden really enjoyed working with him.
Yeah, I know Rohde was very ground-based.
Very ground-based and no uncoiling of the right leg. So he thinks about hip through instead of exploding off the right leg.
Yeah, and I know he learned from Bondarchuk.
Yep. But we've talked to him. I'm actually trying to get him right now. He's on this here in Vermilion, Ohio. You're dealing with this really small town. So he's got like 20 kids going out for the varsity football team next year, and he's going to be a freshman, and they want to move him to varsity. And I'm just trying to talk to him. I'm like, you're going to get your ass kicked for 4 years. I said, or you can go throw, and I'll get you sessions with Rohde, and I'll get you sessions with Kurt Roberts and Elijah Talk and all these people, and I'll buy you sessions, and all you can do is throw.
I think a lot of kids are making that wise move now. There's not that expectation now that there used to be that if you're a big, strong kid, you're automatically going to throw or play football.
And he's really good at football, but his team isn't very good. Yeah. So you got to go with something, it doesn't matter.
Even in the years that I coached, and that was one thing I always stressed to my athletes, was I said you can really distinguish yourself a lot more in track and field. You can really thin the pool that you're competing with, as opposed to team sports.
The other thing is at my tallest, I'm nowhere near it now. I've definitely shrunk, but at my tallest, I was 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
His mother is 5'1".
Yeah.
You could be the best linebacker in the world if you're 6 feet tall. Nobody wants to talk to you. But shot put, it's all about distance. It
doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're actually going down to St. Pete Beach in 2 weeks, and I'm going to get him a session with. I'm friends with Kibwe Johnson, and I'm going to get him. So me and Crystal, his wife, are going to do a podcast while Kibwe works with Hayden, and Hayden's like so into the hammer right now. So that should be really cool. I mean, so in the last year and a half, he'll have worked with like 4 different Olympians, which is
great experience.
Wouldn't that have been insane when we were kids?
I can remember being 14 or 15. It was the end of my freshman year, and we had just gotten dial-up internet in the house. And Randy Barnes at that time, had something where he said if you mailed him a VHS copy of you throwing, he would analyze it, for $30.
Yeah.
And I remember asking my mom and saying, "Mom, can I please mail this VHS of me throwing to this guy, for $30? And she said, "Absolutely not," and then made me go mow the lawn or something. And that was the end of it.
Right, yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself,
that was a new business. That business does not exist. No. I remember doing that as a pro Highland Games athlete, talking about spending some money. I did that with Coach Mack, Luke McKay's dad. Yeah. And I sent him the video and had him analyze it. And he sent back, I don't know if you ever talked to Coach Mack, but
I did one time. He was very mystical.
Okay, so So he sent back the most incoherent, ramblings about my throwing, and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" But I'm sure it made sense to like the people he coaches who are used to talking to him.
Did he include the ... grin?
Oh yeah, yes,
the grin.
That was always his thing.
That was it. It was. He was so West Coast.
Yes,
he's so West Coast, and just the ultimate like California dude. To the point where you, from a throwing perspective, you probably just want to shake him and just ask him.
Just tell me where to put my right foot. That's all I want to know. Yeah, that was. I remember doing that with Coach. Zen. Yeah, I don't know if he's still coaching or not. I haven't.
I don't know. I saw that Luke just had.
Luke just had a baby.
I think it was past week.
We've been. He's a super busy dude, even before the baby. So we're bouncing back. I'd like to get him on the podcast sometime this year.
A great interview.
Yeah, and we threw together a little bit coming up, and he was always so much fun.
Fun guy. I threw with him at Monterey at one time. It was me and Luke and Rusty Price.
Rusty,
it was the 3 of us. He was Ryan's protege.
Yeah,
and
he was like the world's strongest beekeeper.
Yeah, and he was also he was an interesting character too. A really nice guy, real just laid back, quiet guy, and.
I was at Celtic Classic with him one year.
Yeah.
He was tearing it up.
Yeah, and he was an absolute character. Rusty, he hasn't been around for probably five or 6 years.
Some of those Celtic Classics, I was there before it was nationals too. Right. So I think I went to Celtic like eight or 9 times total, 5 of them as nationals. But used to get the Scots would come over, and
Gordon
Goodmanson would come over. I threw against Gordon, I threw against Alistair and Peter and Francis, and there was just so many talented people there. And Ryan always won, but Alistair would break field records all the time in the hammer, and it was just an outlaw group of guys just hanging out. And you got treated like rock stars, and everybody in town knew what you were there for, and you were treated like kings. And
I had my first experience with Celtic this past year as the announcer, which I know which I know KO didn't approve of.
What was that? I can't remember. Was that what he didn't approve of?
Yeah.
Oh, it was on the podcast we were talking about that.
Yeah, KO didn't think that I would be a dynamic enough announcer.
Such a dick.
What did he say? He was like, Beau
was the announcer?
No, I love Beau. Don't get me wrong. I love Beau, but I just don't think he'd be that great an announcer. Sorry, Beau.
That's exactly how he said
it. That was it. I couldn't believe it. People were calling me. I think Jeff Cass called me, or a few other people said, "Beau, have you listened to Valenti's latest podcast? KO's talking shit." And
here's the thing with KO that people don't understand. I may have been a dick on the Highland Games circuit, but everybody knew I was a dick, and I was always a dick my personality never changed.
Yeah, you were consistent.
Now, Kerry is Mr. Sweet, innocent, nice Southern gentleman. You get a couple cocktails in him, and he turns into a dick. So it just ruins that whole facade.
My mother was from the South, and half of my family's from the South, and I learned very quickly that beneath that veneer of Southern gentility, as the Southerners always say, bless your heart.
Yeah,
and there's that.
Pure evil.
There is sometimes. But yeah, so I was there as the announcer this past year.
That's awesome.
Which was great, and it was probably the only way I can get on the field at Celtic. So I'll take it however I can.
Where are you in the rankings? Well, you were all hurt last year.
Yeah, but even the last couple of years, I just have not been.
Yeah.
I've with the issues I've had with my lower back. It's just been, and I'm still trying to get healthy. I'm still trying to figure out what the solution is. But in some events, it's almost like having an engine with a governor on it, where I just cannot rip certain events, and it's so frustrating.
Have you gotten any myofascia stretch release people?
I have, and I've been doing some stuff lately. I've got a very good massage therapist who's been helping me, and I've gone through so many different modalities of.
How long are you here for?
I'm leaving Sunday morning. Okay. I've got to fly out Sunday morning.
I've got a girl who works on me in Rocky River who is just, and I'm getting her on the podcast too. She is a fucking animal. Yeah. She's this little tiny bodybuilder girl, but she's a former Poliquin coach. Yeah. And she breaks stuff up on me that, I mean, it's insane that the productivity of a session with her is incredible.
Yeah, and for me, it's the injury goes way back now, 18 years now to the first time I injured my back. So there's a couple of herniated discs. Yeah. And just all kinds of other little things to the point where I've re-injured it multiple times. And as I'm getting older, it's becoming a little bit more susceptible to re-injury. Right. I've had times where I've been pain-free. I had about a month and a half in December and January where I was literally pain-free, and then it's started to come back again. So I'm constantly, I'm turning over every stone trying to figure out what is it that I was either doing then, or what am I doing now that I shouldn't be, or whatever, because I know that I still can feel pain-free, but it's like the white whale.
Yeah, sure.
So that has unfortunately that's certainly put a damper on my throwing. But I'm always optimistic. Yeah, I'm kind of the eternal optimist that I will continue to soldier on and still think that my best throws are ahead of me. I know that you had your best throws in your late 30s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I retired at 39 and 37, 38, 36, 37, 38 were my best seasons.
And I'm 36 right now. And still coming back off of last year, but I'm still optimistic nonetheless. But yeah, so Celtic, I was nowhere near. And last year was an interesting year too, because a lot of guys got hurt. Mm-hmm. So of course, famously, Dave Barron got in.
That was funny,
which was awesome. Yeah, that was so cool. And Dave was, to his credit, until I think the third round, the only pro to turn the challenge caber last year. And we got the crowd really whipped up for that. Yeah, because Dave at 46 last year was pretty awesome. So that was a lot of fun to see, and the crowd loved it, but it was great. Celtic was, and it was as advertised. It was truly the Super Bowl of Highland games. It really is, and to have such a knowledgeable crowd out there, and
everybody's been drinking all weekend, and they're just chanting and screaming. It's
superb.
And they're 10 deep around the perimeters of the field, and
the people watching on the bridge, the overpass.
People on the bridge, and the beer, everything you want. The beer's flowing. By the time the challenge caber starts, everybody's drinking. All the athletes are getting hammered. We're just fucking around.
And the whole town is like a block party.
Yeah.
I mean, Bethlehem felt like it didn't sleep, on Friday night or Saturday night.
And the way they do it is they don't charge any admission to spectators. They just charge the vendors,
which is smart. And then they make a killing.
Yeah, it was. When I was before I was married to Erin, I went 1 year. So my last year at Celtic, I took my money from Celtic and I bought her an engagement ring because it was huge money, Right. So it was like, okay, I have to throw this far to get this ring, and I have to get this far to. But I took my money and bought her an engagement ring my last year there, and but it was one of those games where the beer would start flowing during the challenge caber. There's girls on the field, and they're sitting with you. Who the fuck are these girls? Where did they come from? And Jane would just kind of the games were over. She was okay. Everything, all the stress just went off her, and she was okay with letting her hair down.
Well, I'm sure during those years, Zulk was taking his shirt off probably 4 times a day,
constantly half naked,
and constantly bringing women out to the field.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that was a big part of the attraction.
Zulk was always surrounded. He was a good-looking young man who didn't have the giant belly like the rest of us. So he was always surrounded, and that's probably the games I missed the most. And it was such a struggle for me. I never got in at like the 6th best guy. I was always 10, 9, 11, and someone drop out, and I would get in, and it was always a struggle. And you get that. I think it was like the 2nd or 3rd week in August where the final rankings would come out, and again you get that moment where, oh my God, I made it! Thank God,
And this year is going to be tough because there's a lot of these new guys that are coming in who are just throwing bombs.
Yeah,
Colin Dunbar out west, Kyle Lilly, Gary Randolph. A bunch of guys just turned pro this past year, and these guys are already impact guys.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see this year. It's going to be a good one. So I got an email from Jane just 2 weeks ago, so they brought me back. So they're bringing me back, so that'll be fun. So we'll get the crowd whipped up again. As long as we don't have to hear monster truck announcer again, because there was a couple years there where I was watching it from my computer, and all you would hear was, "Ladies and gentlemen, Spencer Tyler." And after a while, I just thought I had to turn it off.
Yeah.
I had to turn the sound down.
One year they had that guy and Steve Pulcinella, and then as the weekend went on, Steve just took over.
Just hijacked it.
So I don't know if they turned that guy's speaker off, but Steve just started going.
And Steve, of course, is depending on the mood he's in, he can be a good announcer, or he can just make the sport look like a complete farce as well.
Steve is my one of my best friends in the world, and he is what I like to call a sad sack. He is not happy unless he's absolutely fucking miserable.
And now he's proud to make that perfectly clear every day on social media, with his Instagram.
I have said this a million times on this podcast. People ask me about opening a gym, and I said, you should not be legally allowed to open a gym unless you follow Steve Pulcinella on social media for 1 year.
It's enough to make anybody probably reconsider that.
And all the stuff he goes through, I go through too. I just don't bitch about it.
You have a different disposition.
But that's life. People, just this week, flushing paper towels down your toilet so you have a backup, or...
I saw the note that you had above the toilet.
Yes. If you're a filthy pig person and you're going to do that, it just drove me nuts. I was so pissed off. But people don't give a shit. It's not their gym, so they just do whatever the fuck they want to it.
Of course, people have no respect. It's like when I'm at school every day. You go into the boys' bathroom at the end of the day in school, and you just see. I feel so terrible for the custodians because every single day they're literally just picking up. I mean, in some cases, literal shit off of the floor.
Yeah. Because
they have no respect, And somebody made a suggestion recently to the school paper. They said that all the kids that get in trouble should be required to clean the bathrooms. It should be like it is in the schools in Japan where they don't have custodians and the kids are required.
It's not a bad idea
to keep everything tidy. And once they take ownership of it, they have a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
So but people are horrible as a whole.
When my wife and I got married, we talk about everything, but we had conversations where if I would leave a cup out, she would go, is that my responsibility to pick that up? I mean, whose is that? Is it who's going to pick that up if you don't pick it up?
Right.
And that was like a switch turn. I'm like, oh yeah. So now I walk around here, I walk around the house, and there's something on the floor. You pick it up because what are you going to walk past it and expect somebody else to pick it up?
Being married has changed me in that regard.
Yeah.
So, I'm much less of a slob than I used to be. My wife might disagree, but.
All you can do is improve.
That's it.
That's all you can do.
That has to be your goal as a human being every day.
Yeah, I make a tremendous effort, and I'm sure it's nowhere near what she would like, but I do make a tremendous effort to clean shit up and make sure the house is nice, and And it irritates the fuck out of me when she compliments me on it, because I'm like, I'm not your fucking house husband, you know? I know I've got kind of a phony baloney job, but she's not trying to be a dick. She's just trying to say, hey, you know, I appreciate it. Yeah, so it's definitely
I think I'm the opposite. I think I'm always searching for that validation. I'm always hoping to get a compliment here and there. I'm the kind of guy, you know, I'll empty the dishwasher, and then, you know, I want to get that moment of surprise. Oh, you emptied the dishwasher.
Right,
oh,
right.
That's one. You know, what a great.
She has this friend. She has this friend, and she comes home. She's gonna kill me for telling this story. She has this friend, and she comes home and tells me, "You're not gonna believe what so and so and her husband do." And I said, "What?" He goes, "If he takes the garbage out, she gives him a blowjob." And she's expecting me to go, "Oh, well, that's fucking ridiculous." And I'm like, it's the goddamn best idea I've ever heard of.
That's the greatest deal. That's the greatest deal ever for him.
He's got the best life.
Oh my god.
So yeah, but she didn't go for that. That
wouldn't work for me either, because trash day is every day at the condo association or 6 days a week. So let's just forget about it.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. Yeah, that's a lot of work for her.
Maybe if it's weekly, as it is in most places. Yeah, that's.
Oh yeah, that's good. But yeah, good that you're going back to Celtic. That'll be nice for you.
Yeah, it'll be good, and yeah, it's a fun games, and yeah, I just. You know, I only live about 2-3 hours from there. You know, and people for years have been saying, you got to go to Celtic. You know, I've been in the sport now 20 years, and never had gone, even on a free weekend. You know, and you know how it is as an athlete. Sometimes you don't want to spectate; you just want to always be out throwing.
Yeah.
But this was the first time. You know, I always said, "Oh, I'm going to go," and then there was the games in St. Louis a few years ago, so I went to that instead and competed and ate way too much ice cream. But yeah, going last year makes me wonder. I should have been going up every single year, because it's just such a party, really.
It really is, and spectating's hard. Me and Pulcinella went and watched 2007 Worlds in West Virginia, I think it was.
Yeah, that was the one in Bridgeport.
They ruined that games because they just bankrupt them.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, they just. That was a small, tiny game.
Small games, yeah. It was a massive games.
Yeah, and it was a torrential downpour, and nobody gave a shit about Pro Highland Games World anyhow. And
the crowd there probably wouldn't know the difference between that and.
It was miserable. It was miserable watching. It was miserable being in the rain. Yeah. Some interesting characters, though. They had Kirill Chuprinin, remember him, and Gregor, and Betts won that year, and
that was Sean's year. Yeah, Kirill was like a frightening guy. I remember hearing stories about him over in Scotland.
He was a hitman or something
like that. Yeah. I think he had done some nefarious stuff with the KGB, or I'm not sure. You know,
he had these fucking crazy blue eyes.
KGB, yeah, but yeah, he was doing weird stuff.
He was gigantic.
There was a guy when I was competing in Scotland too. A southpaw shot putter named Dominic Zielinski.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy was gigantic, and he was hanging out with the Wintas.
Yeah.
So there was a Team Venta that year where it was Lucas and Sebastian and Dominic, and Dominic didn't speak English, or at least he let on he didn't speak English at all, and he was just gigantic. He was just like a bear of a human, and I remember people were saying that he was either a bodyguard or a hitman or an assassin or something or another. And I can remember at one games, he left his jacket behind. He had this really nice Glenfiddich rugby jacket.
Yeah.
And it had embroidered on the side the Polish flag, and it said Team Venta, and it had his name on the back. And I can remember Scott Ryder and I were the only ones left before we left, and Scott goes, he said, "Oh, you should take it, mate." He's trying to get me to take it.
Yeah.
What a great memento.
Right.
And I grabbed the jacket and I put it in the car, and then when I went to the games the next day, I thought to myself, should I keep this thing?
Yeah.
And I said, absolutely not. And I went and I took it out and I gave it to him. I think I just said Dominic, and the guy turned around and his face lit up, and he gave me the biggest bear hug ever and practically just broke me.
Right.
And said something in Polish, and I said, thank God I gave that guy his jacket back, because he probably would have killed me otherwise.
Yeah. There was always, that's the thing about Highland Games back in the day, was there's so many fucking characters,
right?
Just you get crazy stories, and Hamish Davidson stories, and Phil Martin.
Oh my God, yeah, I heard crazy. I mean, the Hamish stories were insane.
Yeah,
the ones that Dougie wrote about in his book.
Yes,
and some of the ones that Dougie told me in person, and some of the ones I think that Gregor had told me, and I mean, there was stuff that Doug hadn't even published.
Yeah.
Stuff that was even worse, that wasn't even suitable. And he published whatever about anybody. That's what made his books so great.
They were good,
The thing that's so great about his books is that, there's really no filter. They're just tell-alls of all the sleaze of the Highland games.
See, that's why I can't do that. I want to do that on this podcast, but I can't tell some of those stories.
I know. And
I can't be the guy to do that to people.
And he just didn't give a shit. He just writes all of that stuff to the point where I'm surprised some of those athletes didn't come in and give him a hard time for smearing his name, but that's what makes it so entertaining too. It's not about, none of those are about throwing. That's why I always tell people, buy Dougie's books, buy The World's Greatest Tosser.
That's a great one.
I mean, I bought that book from Larry Brock. I was at Pleasanton in 2006, and Larry was selling it. Larry, of course, was trying to make a buck
on
off of anything.
Yeah.
So Larry had just bought a bunch of them from Doug, and he brought them out there, and me being, a historian, I bought a copy for $20, and I read that book, and I mean, that book, I don't know, it just changed. It did something to me. It just changed my perspective of the games and the sport, and I think that was the book that really made me want to take the sport seriously, even though none of the good stuff from the book had to do with throwing.
No.
It was all the...
it was adventure.
It was the adventure, and it was all of the post-games adventures.
Yeah.
And
that's what makes the sport so great.
Those are going to be everyone's memories.
Yep. You're getting paid to take a road trip with your buddies every weekend for 5 months out of the year.
Exactly.
It just doesn't get any better than that.
And the throwing is part of it.
Yeah.
But there have been some weekends where I don't remember the throwing. I remember one weekend a few years ago, Zolk convinced me to come up to Rhode Island. Said, I'll pick you up from the airport. So I fly up there. Zolk picks me up, and it was like a 36-hour whirlwind.
Yeah.
Where at the end, it was like waking up and just saying, what happened?
Yeah.
And I don't even really remember the throwing. I just remember Zolk picks me up. Next thing you know, he takes me to some Mexican place. We're doing shots of tequila. Then we are, eating New Haven pizza somewhere. We are in the casino, at the Mohegan Sun. We're playing craps and roulette and winning all this money. Then at some point, the games happens. Then we're back in the casino. And then Zolk's ordering the world's largest tower of seafood, and there's more drinks, more shots. He forces me to eat a 23-layer cake from Michael Jordan's restaurant. There's more roulette, more craps, more drinks. Next thing you know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning, and he drops me off at the airport.
Yeah,
because I had a 6 a.m. flight. And I get back, I get on the airplane, or I come back home. I just say, "What the hell happened?"
Yeah,
and I almost didn't even remember. I know there was a games in there, but it was so much just wild, weird shit going on.
Yeah.
And I think there have been other weekends like that too.
Those are the best ones.
They're the best.
They are.
That's really what it's.
I had so many of those with Overfelt that they were just.
Well, with that crew, hanging out with Carrie and Craig, and particularly if you had Chafin in tow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine those were.
Just stupid shit like trips to Walmart. I remember Carrie getting trapped at a muumuu one time in Walmart. We talked him into trying it on. Try this muumuu on, big giant dress. He tries it on, can't get it off. So we all just disperse, and we're leaving him there. He's like, "Dude, you gotta help me get this off." And he's chasing me around Walmart, trying to get me to undress him.
I feel like just about every games that KO or Chafin went to, there's an inevitable trip to Walmart.
Yeah. Because you had to get Chafin snacks.
Right.
So it was Target or Walmart, Kmart, somewhere where he could get his little Debbie snacks, and he would just eat those the entire time.
I remember Zolk had a good story about hanging out with you guys. I think out in the Claw. I think that involved a casino too.
I wasn't there for that one. That was Craig and Carrie and Zolk. They went to the Muckleshoot, and I think he screwed Carrie out of some, or he talked Carrie he made Carrie talked him into letting it ride, and Carrie ended up losing like a bunch of money. So Enum Claw was one of those places where you always had crazy adventures, and there's always debauchery going on. Right. So what grade are you teaching?
So I teach 7th grade.
Uh-huh.
I teach 7th grade U.S. history. So I actually have U.S. history from the end of the Civil War to the present. So
That's different.
I teach all of really contemporary history. So I teach the entire 20th century.
Yeah.
And it's been that curriculum for a long time. It gets more and more challenging because each year we get further away from 1865, and yet we're responsible for now 150 years of American history. But it's great. It's a great age. It's a great curriculum. I never thought I would teach middle schoolers. When I got out of college with my history degree, I thought I would be a high school teacher, and I'd be teaching the upper level grades, and it was going to be a real Dead Poet Society type thing,
right.
with these honor students and whatnot. And my first year, I was a long-term substitute at the school that I was coaching track at. And I had 7th graders and 10th graders that year. And I found that I couldn't stand most of my sophomores. I loved the 7th graders. And, most people think that's the worst age in the world. You tell people you teach middle school, and they think, they either tell you you're crazy or they say, God bless you.
Yeah.
But I love it. So I've been at a school for the past 11 years, and it's interesting because, I live just outside of Washington, D.C., so I live in Arlington, Virginia. I'm not far from the Pentagon and the cemetery, and I teach about 15 minutes further out, 10, 15 minutes further out in a place called Annandale, which was a very typical, it started out as a very typical old post-war suburb, that really built up in the 1950s with all the, tract houses and whatnot. And the area really has evolved over time to the point where at my school, I think they determined this past year, there are over 65 languages spoken at the homes of the students.
Wow.
So we are one of the most diverse schools, literally diverse in terms of having people from everywhere.
Sure.
In the entire country.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting perspective because for me, that's my normal. That's what I'm used to.
Yeah.
I think we're 95% non-white at my school. Large poverty, very large free and reduced lunch. Just about everybody would be considered to be some degree English as a second language. Whether they're literally just getting here now or if they've been here, or even if they were born in the U.S. So it's a very, very interesting perspective that a lot of people, living in America would not have the opportunity to experience. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Yeah, we have a ton of kids from, and it's interesting too, because I remember National Geographic, I think it was about 15 years ago, did a article about how America was changing.
Right.
And they profiled a high school, and the high school that they profiled is actually the school that my middle school feeds into, where at that time they were saying this is the most diverse school. And they were just kind of talking about the paradox for a lot of kids now of, growing up and going home and, often being second generation and, staying true to their customs, their language, but also the fact that these kids in every other sense are just like every other American teen. They do the things that every American teenager does, and it's really fascinating. You have to kind of see it to believe it. There's very little racial tension among the students. They don't know anything different, which is what's really incredible about it. We have kids. I'll be standing in front of a class, and I look out amongst my class, and I have kids from El Salvador, Honduras, Bolivia, Peru, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Sudan, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Vietnam, Cambodia, Korea, and China in one class.
Yeah.
That's one class.
Right.
And yet everybody's sitting there, everybody's, obviously we're communicating in English. Most of them are more proficient in English than they are even in their family's native languages. Mm-hmm. And they don't see, we've gotten to a point here, despite a lot of the rhetoric that we hear in America, that the kids are very colorblind.
The kids are fine.
Yeah.
My son, him and his friends are colorblind. It's really interesting to see, and it's a breath of fresh air. And he'll hear a joke on TV, or even I'll make a joke about somebody, and Dad, that's racist. it's not racist if I like them. I'm making it. Black guys have big cocks. It's like that's not racist. But he is just appalled by anything like that.
Well, it's
which is good.
Yeah, and it's interesting because kids like to. That quote has almost become a joke in my class where kids will say that to each other, and it's all kind of in jest. Because even kids at this point, believe it or not, even kids who are from all over the world, to a certain degree, want to get beyond even the political correctness. Like they don't want these qualifiers.
Yeah.
Because they don't look at it like, they just see each other as the people that they are, which is very refreshing because it was different for their parents' generation. So, for example, my wife is from Bolivia originally. So she immigrated to America when she was 9. So she came here, had to learn English immediately. She was fluent within a year of getting here, and has basically had, the American dream. She put herself through, did very well in high school, put herself through college, worked 3 jobs through college, ended up, she works for the State Department now. She's a boss in the State Department.
Yeah.
Became a U.S. citizen, all of this. So everything that she has done has been very difficult, but it's that embodiment of the American dream. It's why her parents came here.
Yeah.
And I talk to my students about that a lot. But for her, it was different, and for her cousins, it was different because her cousins went to the high school that my school feeds into, and they were telling me stories about back in the early '90s when they were going to school there, and they said there was a lot of racial tension.
Yeah.
They said at that time people were just coming over, so you'd go into the cafeteria and there would be 2 tables of white kids. There'd be 2 tables of black kids. There'd be 2 tables of all the Asian kids. There'd be 2 tables of all the Hispanic and Latino kids. And everybody stuck together. And occasionally, there would be like brawls between groups. There were real problems. And I tell that story to my students now. My students can't believe it. And I'm talking about their parents' generation, or their aunts and uncles' generation. And I explain that to them, and they just don't understand that because they're all friends. There could be a group of 5 best friends, and they're from all over the world.
That's great.
And I guess that's kind of the point that I teach them, because obviously I teach about, having to teach the last 150 years, I teach about, European immigration in the mid to late 1800s.
Probably civil rights movement.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And, and I teach that, my class is brutal. I tell the kids at the beginning, because, for the most part, it's the first time they get to learn modern history, real contemporary history.
I don't think we learned that in high school.
No.
You got Civil War and Revolutionary War every year.
And here's the thing. A lot of people don't teach it because it's uncomfortable to talk about.
Sure.
It's more comfortable to talk about things that happened 200 years ago than it is to teach, a classroom with Vietnamese kids about the end of the Vietnam War, where you see their grandparents hanging off of a helicopter during the fall of Saigon.
Yeah.
It's a lot more visceral. And that's really what my class is. And, I get the opportunity to bring it into modern history, but I tell the kids at the beginning of the year, I say, this class is going to be different than anything you've experienced up to this point. And I tell them it's not going to be Disney history. We're going to learn the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
And you're going to leave a lot smarter and a lot wiser and maybe a little sadder.
Yeah.
And actually, it was interesting because we got out of school last week, and the kids always write nice little notes in my yearbook. They usually say all these nice things. But I had one student who wrote something this year. It was a Korean girl. And she wrote, "Mr. Faye, thank you for one of the greatest and most horrifying classes I've ever had." And I thought to myself, yes, that person gets it.
She gets history.
Because it is horrifying when you look at the truth. So
I talk to my wife about, because I read history books all the time, and it's the story, it's the darkness of the human condition that you're reading about, no matter what period of time it takes place.
Yeah, and that's a difficult thing to teach to kids. When you're an adult and you go through life and you get jaded a little bit, it's one thing. But when you have kids who are young and optimistic and kind of idealistic, that can burst their bubble a little bit.
You got to teach them about My Lai massacre.
Exactly, which we do. I show them pictures from My Lai, and we talk about that, and it's hard to reconcile that when you're also teaching about the great men that fought during the Vietnam War, and the mistreatment that they endured, and kind of the apathy that our country had towards them. So it's hard to reconcile these different things too, teaching kids from Central America about all the things the clandestine things that we did in that part of the world, and yet at the same time, opening up our arms to them, and they live here, and their parents came here for a better life too. So it can be a difficult thing to explain. It's that two-sided coin.
Yeah.
But the most important thing that I always stress to them is that whether you came here 150 years ago or whether you came here a year ago, the idea is that in this country, the history of this country is that people get shit on for a while, and with each generation, things hopefully get a little bit better, and you become more established, and you become a professional here. People come here, and people that are professionals in other countries leave that behind and come to the United States, realizing that they're not going to be necessarily in the U.S. But hopefully their kids will be, and then their grandkids will be, and then they'll be established. So we are actually making a lot more progress, because I see it every day. I'm in the trenches that people, if you turn on the mainstream media, it doesn't matter if it's CNN or Fox, doesn't matter who. It paints a very different picture than what you're seeing on the ground level. But what I can say is that it is encouraging. I think what I see every day, and even looking at history. I mean, I think back to my great grandmother had a pair of uncles who came over in the 1850s to New York from Ireland. These guys didn't even speak English. And when the war broke out, they had two choices. You can either go build the transcontinental railroad with the Chinese, and we're going to work you to death, or you can join the segregated Irish brigades, because we don't want you to fight with real Americans.
Right.
And those two guys, they were the Donnelly brothers. They chose the latter, and they went and they fought and they survived the war. And it was only after that they were allowed to become U.S. citizens. Wow. So if you look at it, sometimes it goes beyond even racial differences or skin color or religion or whatever. It's just we think these people are inferior, and you have to prove yourself before. So it's a long history. The country has a long history of shitting on people, but also providing opportunities that don't exist wherever they come from.
You think about other countries, though, and I think all countries that have different religious or ethnic makeups have a history of shitting on each other.
Yes.
But what you don't get is what you said, where it seems to get better. You have these long histories of Shiites and Sunnis hating each other, or it's
and that's the other thing is people we hold ourselves to a different standard as Americans because of our Constitution and because of our a lot of the words in our famous documents where we are holding ourselves to a different standard. However, if you want to see true racism, go to another country. Go to other countries. I mean, if you want to see classism, go to Latin America. I've spent a lot of time in Latin America, a lot of different countries, and you go down there, and if you are born with dark skin, unless you're an athlete, your social status is pretty much predetermined for life. So, when I was in Colombia just recently, along the coast, many of the Colombians are black, and they're the poorest. They're working in the lowest level jobs. They have hopes and dreams like everybody else, but they're not going to be able to realize those unless they're an athlete. Because or maybe a singer. Because if you watch the Colombian Olympic teams and you watch the athletes come out, same with the Cuban teams or the Dominican team or the team from Panama or in some cases Ecuador, you see who are their athletes. 80% of them are black.
Right.
And yet
Cuba.
Exactly, Cuba. Yet if you look at the way the rest of them are living, they're living terribly. They're impoverished, and sports for them are the only way out, or entertainment. And it really is predetermined. There is not an opportunity. And then you start to go, as the skin color gets progressively lighter, you see more and more opportunities, and you see the social caste system get higher and higher. And you see people who are completely Caucasian, people who are of 100% European descent, and they're the ones that are running the show. And they're the wealthy ones. They're the landowners. They're usually the presidents and vice presidents, and it's predetermined to the point where you have people. I have students who come from Central America or South America, and they avoid the sun. because they don't want to get a shade darker. And it's kind of that whole idea is that, the irony of the world is that white people spend the world hanging out in the sun trying to get a nice tan, and the rest of the world wishes their skin color was lighter. It's a crazy world.
Yeah. Right. We all need to get our calories in and our water in, and we're all the same, except for the stupid melatonin in our skin.
That's correct.
Fucking crazy.
That's correct. Well, I guess that was quite a tangent there, but that was
it was great.
Talking about history and whatnot.
I'm gonna wrap this up. I have a jiu-jitsu seminar to go to tonight, so I'm going to be
kicking some ass,
grappling with Felipe Costa tonight. Two-time Brazilian jiu-jitsu champion.
Yeah, I saw you posted something yesterday. You were doing some.
I was wrestling with Kyle Cannell, who's a fucking nightmare. He was just on the podcast afterwards. I said, "Hey, why don't you come out next week and we'll do some grappling?" Because he's been doing jiu-jitsu. He's NCAA silver medalist in wrestling. Yeah. So we got done drilling. I said, "Kyle, we got to go, man. You want to roll?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I lasted literally like 2 minutes and 15 seconds before he choked me out, and which for me was a huge accomplishment.
Do you have a background in that?
I wrestled in high school. Okay. That's all I had. And when I got done, my buddy Seth, he was like, "Why did you offer to roll with them?" I said, "It's like fucking big wave ride, man. It's there. You got to try it. You got to see what it's like to have a silver medalist inside your guard, and motherfucker is fast."
Yeah, so, I don't think I have the right temperament for those contact sports. I just think
I do now a lot more because I'm older and I don't expect to beat guys like him. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's more like. For me, it's nice to be a white belt and just learning and not having any pressure to be awesome. Just learn and get better, and you get better every single day you go in there. And tonight I'll go in and get fucked up at this thing, but I'll be out the field tomorrow having fun, and it'll be good, and I'll have learned something. So it's cool.
Well, it's going to be good to have you on the mic tomorrow. I'm sure the crowd's going to appreciate it, and
we'll see.
I don't know if the athletes will appreciate it, but. It'll be fun.
I'll focus mostly on Gillingham.
Make fun of of course, make fun of Gilly. Make fun of John Collins as much as possible, and his childbearing hips.
Okay.
And let me think who else.
Matt Hand is easy.
Well, that's easy
torture.
I mean, that's simple.
Yeah.
John Pilling's too nice. That's the problem. He's
a sweetheart.
Yeah, he's such a nice guy, and Doug is too nice. And he's old, so you don't want to. But you have a few people you can pick on there.
Yeah, I'll have some fun.
Yeah. And then just make a lot of excuses for me. Just say, Beau's been injured, and just make it, really try to whip up some sympathy for me, and
we'll make you the crowd favorite. All right, I want to thank you for coming in. We will do this again sometime, I'm sure, and good luck tomorrow.
Thanks for having me, Mark, and look forward to being out on the field tomorrow.
All right, brother. This has been the Refined Savage. See ya.